Last week we kind of dissected the end of Blair Warren's quote, and we're at the end of the quote. He talks about throwing rocks at your enemies. In other words, in understanding the marketplace, you've got to understand, you know, what are their bragging rights? What are they trying to do? And I thought it was quite a good conversation, and I think it's kind of worth maybe pulling a little bit more a part of that quote if that would be helpful for some people here. Um, and it's working it backwards because at the beginning of the quote he talks about kind of cluing into people's dreams, but sometimes we kind of get stuck in the wrong perspective, I think, when we're having a conversation with somebody, and oftentimes we're going to miss that little click that will get them to move over into wherever we want to take them. We want to do that ethically, but we want to do that with a lot of respect. Does that make sense? And so the full quote, just for context. Now I got to find it here. Oh my gosh. I'm going to read it. People will do anything for those who encourage their dreams, justify their failures, allay their fears, confirm their suspicions, and help them throw rocks at their enemies. Okay? Very, very powerful. And you could unpack this probably for the rest of your life. I get some phrases like, Peter Drucker always talks about, now my brain. Culture trumps strategy. Is a phrase that Peter Drucker, and that's another phrase that there's all these phrases out there, but how do we make them work in our business? Does that make sense? So what I want to do is take this and how do we actually make this work in our business? And the big part of this is oftentimes it's confirming their suspicions. And that's kind of like where I'd like to zero in with your permission. Does that sound okay for people? And I'd maybe like to prime that, confirming their suspicions. And I'm so thankful that Richard's on this call because he's like my sounding board when it comes to conspiracy theories and things like that, because he kind of keeps me back in line. Every time I get off on a tangent, he says, Donald, come on, let's get there.
Yeah, the
But
world is not flat, Donald. It's not
well, come on.
flat.
Maybe it's not flat, but it's kind of like this convex
There you go.
bowl there,
There
right? I
you
mean,
go.
that explains the curvature process. But if you'd want to tell me it's like some kind of a sphere, we're going to have a. So confirming somebody's suspicions. When I work with somebody, the phrase I always think is, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. Okay, is one I always think of, and I don't care how right you are. Okay, and you may have a great argument for something or a great pitch or something like that. And in the sales process, there's people that, well, let's hard close them or something, or let's really go for that, you know, providing the no-brainer solution to their problem that we've uncovered. Okay. But if you convince them against their internal will, they haven't moved. Okay. Anybody ever run up against that? It's like really? It's like, right. And but the other side of that too is you can't say the right thing to the wrong person. And you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. But I always think of that character that Peter Falk played. Did anybody remember the Columbo?
Columbo.
And remember his phrase? He'd be kind of walking through the room, right? And Camilla's like, right? It's like what? And he just kind of scratches and says, just one more thing, right? Remember that? Just one more thing. Like, now, why is that cigarette butt turned 3 degrees to the left in that ashtray? And the sun has come through the window here at 1 o'clock, casting that shadow. I've just got to think that stain on the carpet is right. Remember those? I mean, it's like you're kind of going, what? So when you
We're
have
watching
to,
them now.
yeah, it's like, right. It's just like, there you go. And my wife gave me a bad time because I finally gave up my overcoat that looked like his. It's like you realize that's a Columbo overcoat. It's like that's got to go to the giveaway bin. No, but it was my favorite. I mean, I wore that thing all over New York. And what year was that? 1970. It's like,
Yeah, 70s.
yeah, like, so when you're confirming somebody's suspicions, how do you guys play that out? Are you tracking with me? Thoughts?
Well, do you want to do that sometimes when their suspicions are completely goofy? Do you really want to confirm their suspicions? Donald, what you do, what you have taught us, and you've taught me, uh, I read a ton, I don't have to say again, I read a ton of books. This cracking this nut of changing someone's mind, that's a tough nut. Hardly anybody exactly has an idea how to do that. Some people have started to get it, and it starts with what you do, which is building rapport. You cannot come out of the gate trying to even talk about the issue because the defenses go up immediately. The people who are really successful at doing this build rapport, get to know each other, build commonalities, and then still don't address the issue. They'll start to talk about, where do you get your information from? How do you form your opinions? Where does that come from? They may never talk about the issue, but they build that trust, and it doesn't start until then.
So you're telling me in order to confirm their suspicions and use it in maybe in a positive way, you've got to step back a bit and
You can
maybe,
confirm their feelings.
ah,
You can confirm, I can see how you got there. I can
can
see
you, can,
where that
can you?
came from, but you don't have to agree.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, I
there's some
think that
goofy suspicions
you
people have.
acknowledge that there is a logic to what they're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I see your
I bought
logic.
a car recently in the same thing. We started off at a price, and uh, the person explained why they wanted a particular price, and instead of just going, "Oh yeah," but like the usual stuff, and I go, "Okay, yeah, I completely understand. If you look in the book, this is what the kind of thing is up. Um, okay, so that's how you did it. Can I just explain to you how I got to a different price and why it might be an idea to entertain a different price?" And so, having acknowledged that they actually had some right on their side, I said, "Okay." So they felt like I'd taken the time to understand them. I said, "Okay." It's almost like, you know, like in a business workshop, you might say, let's just come out and talk out on the balcony out here or something." And so you're changing it a bit to change it, have a different direction or whatever. And they might only be able to see it once you're out on the balcony, because the view looks different. And they say, "Oh yeah, yeah, I can see that." It's in the same way as there was a famous legal case where the witness said so and so had happened. They actually went to that place, and the person couldn't actually have seen that. So rather than call them a liar, he said, "Oh, that's interesting. So this is what I did. I went out there. I did this. I stood on top of this ladder, which is 10 foot tall. Uh, but you know what? I could only see up 50 yards up the road instead of, whatever it was." And it was a very famous principle into law. So it's interesting. Whereas if you just said, "Oh, that's rubbish," or "You're an idiot," then the rapport just goes zap.
So let's both take out a magnifying glass and look at it together. Can we agree to do that
Yeah.
ultimately? My suspicion is that, I've got a long line of very accredited medical people in my family. Everybody in my family's been born in a hospital. We've used every medical intervention possible. And we're all here with all our fingers and toes. So having a natural childbirth, just a little bit suspicious of that. Just about every diet I have used, and just about every friend I have that has tried a diet has ended up gaining more weight at the end. So trying one more thing, you know what? I'm of the opinion to just eat whatever's on sale in the supermarket. I have studied this currency thing from the side. I've looked at the stock market. I hear all the hype out there. I don't know. Blockchain, I don't think so. When it comes to currency, there's just no way. There's just no way. It's just not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. And come on, little green men, really? Come on.
They're gray. Get it right. They're gray.
So
Especially they're in from Europe.
how do we get there? When you hit those brick walls, what are the tools to get there? Wouldn't
I
you
think
say
you
this
have
is,
to-
wouldn't you say
I
this
would
is a
say-
major hurdle for all of you out there in your marketplace? If you can crack this one, don't you see? You got it.
Donald, I would say have an arsenal of questions you can ask that open up curiosity. Because
Okay.
I might completely disagree with somebody, and rather than jump onto my soapbox or whatever, I'll ask a question. Oh, I'm curious. You know, if somebody's mentioned a book they read, tell me more about that book. I'm just curious, about the person who wrote the book or whatever it might be. And in some cases, when you do that, especially if it's something where you really fundamentally disagree, it often what happens is the other person actually, there really isn't a book or hasn't actually even read that book. Now, not that you're going to call them on that, but they begin to realize as you ask that question that they can't actually back up. They're not standing on particularly solid ground. So they might say back, gosh, I'm not, I'm not sure that's really what I'm trying to say. And they'll come back with something else. Anyway, it becomes a tennis match, maybe.
Yeah, I have a question. Sometimes I used to ask if people come. I think you have to understand that sometimes what people are doing is they're behaving how they think they should behave, and that's particularly true when somewhere like a technical sale or something like that. So when I first did a switch from sort of accountancy and finance to any kind of sales, I worked with this guy, and he said, you don't have to know everything. And I'm kind of like, oh, in finance, you don't know everything. He said, no, he said, I'll show you a technique. So next time I went somewhere, this person asked him this very convoluted question, and he didn't answer it. He just said, okay. And what would you do with that information if I could, when I answer that for you? You see, so he didn't even say he couldn't answer or anything else. He just said, what would you do with that information? And the number of times people just said, oh, well, I don't know, really. I just thought to ask it or whatever. And then we moved on. So it's an interesting way when people ask you for information, ask them, what would you do with that information? And then you may actually have a better opportunity to shape what's happening next or whatever for everybody's benefit.
Yeah, sometimes, and Tony, Anthony, really good perspective there. I think a lot of times in the process, you talk to someone that says, I need to talk to your references, or I need to talk to some people that you've actually done this with. Anybody ever gotten that, or right? My friend Craig Sowers, he's been on this call and is on this mailing list for our group here. His response is, that's not going to happen. And then he would pause, right? And it's like, you see, that's not going to happen. And the way he would say it with authority.
Yes, that's it.
Because that's not what you need. Right? That's not going to give you the reassurance you're looking for. But let me show you what is going to give you reassurance.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And so ultimately, if we want to confirm their suspicions, right, we want to find the common ground, but they're looking for reassurance.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And so sometimes we're trying to go into so what I'm going to say to you guys here is rather than going into combat, is because that's going to build up that's gonna make the wall bigger. Does that make sense? It's like,
Yeah.
rather than to go into combat, especially when you're on the other side, right? Often is find the common ground. There is always a common ground. I mean, there is not a conflict out there between people, between governments, between nations, where there is not some common ground.
Yeah, and I was going to comment too, kind of along those same lines, because I was thinking about how I approach things like that. A lot of times when I feel or see or sense that the defenses go up, there's that defense.
Mhm.
The defense is there because they're expecting the attack, they're expecting the shell, they're expecting the mortar.
Mhm.
And generally, I don't shoot the mortar. What I try to do is I accept the defense. I acknowledge the defense. Go, yep, yeah, okay, and I don't present my own defense. I don't get defensive myself either. I don't present a defense, and their defense sort of softens, and I'll kind of have conversation with that and ask questions, and it seems to remove the walls. I try to never put up a wall, so there's nothing really to defend against, and it seems to lessen the wall on the other side. And then once that starts to happen, conversation can open up and stuff. So
Mhm.
So I know this is making a lot of sense to me because, I was a social worker and still am, but for, 30 years. And in my work every day, I had to create this feeling of being alongside my client in order to actually help them grow and get past challenges. Yeah. And especially when you're talking to somebody with a mental illness who's got, paranoid schizophrenia, it's really sometimes hard to be like, oh yeah, I see those things too. But it's really it gets to developing that trust, because if you don't develop the trust, you don't have anything. So it's really, again, coming alongside the person rather than seeing them as a separate person across the table from you. You see them as beside you.
Excellent. And that's really key. That reminds me when I always talk about Chet Holmes. Here I go. Here's something I learned from Chet, but he'd always teach us to come around on their side of the desk, no matter what. If he would go in and do a presentation for a big entity, right, and the CEO was sitting behind the desk, he would find some way to get them out from behind their desk. In other words, he'd set up the presentation board. He'd say, hey, let's come back around here and look at it together.
Yeah.
Right. So, so think about in context. A lot of times we say if we're doing this virtually, okay, mentally, physically, how can you get somebody out from behind their desk and on the same side? It's a little bit of work, right? Maybe you can't physically do it, but you certainly have to mentally do it. And yeah, Tony, I see you kind of nodding your head. I'm thinking of the work that you used to do, right? Because you like, there's a new Tony in town, right? But ultimately, when you're interrogating somebody, they've got to feel like you're on their side, right?
Yeah, I used to always do the desk thing that you're talking about. I would always try to sit someone, at that right angle as opposed to the other side of a desk, because the other side of a desk is very adversarial. But I was just funny that you brought it up. I was just thinking when I do my discovery calls and anything over Zoom, you're staring at the person, so it gives you that impression. So you have to come up with another way to to put yourself on that side of the desk.
Mm-hmm. Do you know a way to do it? Are you ready? I'm getting ready for a big call here in a moment or two. As share your screen and put up a whiteboard or put up a blank Google Doc, and hey, can we map this out on a piece of paper together? Right? You're both looking at the same piece of paper. That works every time. I was on a big call on Tuesday and with a very large entity, and I had three of the power players in the room, right? And I could see them, the possibility that they would zone out with me, right? Because to them this was a little pea, and I'm thinking, no, this is a huge watermill here. I says, let me share my screen, right? and I put up a blank Google Doc, and I literally just started typing on it, and I watched their attention, and the emotion just changed drastically in that
And
moment.
I think there's something very important in what you just said too. You said, can we work on this together? I think that word together is key, because when you say together, you're not a part of it. It doesn't matter if there's a table there, it doesn't matter what the screen is. When you say together and they buy into that together, you
Yeah.
now are together. So I think, I think we all can agree words are very important. Words are very powerful. I think that word together can be a real game changing word.
Yeah.
That's one of the what I call them, and I teach this in persuasion, implied relationship words. The word share, together, invite.
Mm,
You know, I invite you to ask any questions that arise.
Excellent.
Not ask I invite you, because you invite your friends. You share. It goes back to childhood together. So I love it, Donald. The idea about the Google Doc, the blank doc. That's brilliant. I'm gonna start trying to incorporate that.
And as I said that, Tony, I realized I've done that a few times just kind of by accident and not being planned, and now that I kind of said that a lot, I'm kind of thinking, why don't I do that every time?
Mm.
Think about how much more productive. Think about an enrollment call. Now, here's the trick, right? You're on an enrollment call with somebody, a sales call, right? Or whatever, a discovery call. You want to be attentively listening, right? So the danger is, if you're taking notes or you're typing on a document, are you attentively listening? It's humanly impossible. I'll let you know that. Just let's face it. I don't care who you think you are. Right? Okay. You can't do it. I mean, we do it, but you're not truly attentively listening.
How about if you listen and then you repeat back their words to them, and while you're repeating it back, you type them.
Yeah,
So that
and
way
which-
you're
right. But however, right, Tony, and that's what we have done, right? And I've
Yes.
done that same thing. But what if, right, in our attentive listening, that we're both looking on the Zoom call at a blank Google Doc and you're typing. Now let me make sure that I've captured exactly what you said and what you meant. And they're kind of going, wow. Right? So you could actually speed date this. Does that make sense? In other words, so much time is you got to make them feel like you're attentively listening. But if you got the document, I'm just thinking this, I'm not going to say 100% do it or not, but the possibilities of that are quite large, aren't they? This would be something to test.
Donald, I have an idea about the words that people were just throwing out are fabulous. Invite and share, etc.
Yes.
I'm gonna go even further upstream. I'm doing my best to eliminate the word but when I'm in a conversation and use and instead.
But how is that going for you, Eric?
It's yeah. No, well, it changes the dynamic. Somebody could say to me I completely and totally disagree with, and I might say, a little bit snarky, and how's that working for you? That isn't so much what I mean. Yeah, anyway, yeah.
I find a simple substitution for but is to say at the same time,
Yeah.
or
like
from
that.
another angle.
That sounds very poetic. How poetic of you, Elaine.
Meanwhile, in
am who
another
I am.
land far away.
Yeah. No, that's very good. Very good, Elaine. I like that. The other thing, ultimately it's permission based, right? So those things that Tony kind of threw out there, ultimately you're asking, would it be okay if, right? Do I have your permission? Do I have your permission to maybe ask you an uncomfortable question? Do I have your permission to ask you an uncomfortable question about how much you actually weigh?
And I want to comment on that too, because I'll use the same thing. I think it's incredibly powerful. And maybe everyone on this call already gets it, but what I've seen is when I ask that question and they say no, I respect the no entirely. I see other people will try to get around the no and try to dodge the no and try to restate the no and kind of get past it. When someone tells me the no, I just drop it. It's dropped. And I commit to the dropping it because I respect the no in that situation. Because I think whether they get it consciously or subconsciously, they realize that there's respect there and they're at least an equal. They've got some power. What they're saying has value to the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, it works, Tom, in that situation to ask them, what are you saying no to?
Mm.
Because you're assuming what
Mm.
that no is all about. But that no is about something very specific. It might not be even what you're thinking what no is about.
Seeking clarification. So and that leads into, you know, how else do we get this worked out? So Carly, you know, you bump up against that person that, man, they just follow all the medical advice and everything like that. And so rather than coming at them with all of your wisdom and knowledge and feeling and emotion, is seek clarification. Tell me more about that. Tell me how you got there, and tell me how's that working, and tell me about each and every occasion. And the more you kind of dig in, you're going to kind of go in and say, no, wait a minute. Like in our family, out of the last 12 births, 9 of them have been C-sections now that I think about it. Really? And tell me more about that, right? It's just like, seek clarification. You know, so you say that the last 5 diets that you were on resulted in actually increased weight. Tell me about each of those diets, starting maybe with the first one. Let's go back to the first one that you tried. Tell me more. Tell me more about that. Right? You have to take whatever, and Carly knows this because she can almost spit it back verbatim. You got to take whatever you're selling and put it on the shelf. Okay. Tell me more about that. Tell me about and what led you to that? What was the emotion that led you there? How does that feel? How does it feel to you that the majority of the live births in your close-knit family group were C-sections? Have you ever watched one? That would cure anybody from wanting one in my book. I'm like, why would anybody do that to themselves? Right? It's incomprehensible. You know, it's remember Sigourney Weaver in that movie? What was that movie? I can remember
Alien.
Alien. Oh my gosh. Once you watch that movie, right? How could you ever, right? That would give me, right?
It's so violent. Like
Yeah.
people think it's gentle. No, they're literally pulling these poor little babies out. I'm like,
Mm. Well,
and that's trauma on them.
and could there be issues that pop up down the road for both mom and child that are not being talked about? Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's not go down that rabbit hole. But rather than saying that, right, you want to get them to kind of to jump into, so whatever their suspicions are. Okay. I have a pellet smoker, as you guys all know. I did a few racks of ribs for my daughter's birthday party last week. Whoa, they were good. I'm sorry for you guys that are not meat eaters, but those ribs were dang good. They were just like. And Terry, thank you for your suggestions. Yes, that worked. And
Good.
oh yeah, I mean it's like there's like but my suspicion is, right, before I got that pellet smoker, that it was going to be a lot of work, that I was not going to be able to make that adjustment from a gas grill where you just go out and pop the button on and you're ready to go. I mean, pellet smoker, if you're going to do something, you got to figure out the hour ahead of time that you got to get things going, and you got to be patient and wait and get the right temperature and the right blend of everything. I mean, it's work. It's work before, it's work during, it's work after. My suspicions are that I am not gonna maintain that, or yeah, the sales guy's got a really good pitch on it. And every time I go through Costco, I mean, he reels me in because I'm just right there. But my suspicion is I'm not gonna like it like I like the instant gratification of my gas grill, right? And the sales guy was patient with me for probably over a year. Every time I mean, I was probably, he'd ask me another question about my cooking and my gas grill. Make sense? Patience to ask the questions, to be curious, even though he wanted to sell me that pellet smoker. Make sense? Like step back a bit and get into their world, get into their reality, see how the sun is coming through the window in their house. One of my dear friends when I was younger was an interior designer, and Wade was a master at finding a decorative one plate in a secondhand store someplace and buying it for pennies and bringing it into a very upscale home and positioning that plate on a ledge in the entryway in just a way that at a certain time of day that the shadows from that made that thing look like a museum artifact, right? And he did that over and over and over again. Are you looking at things from another perspective? Go to a different window and look in a different window. When you're talking with somebody, go to a different window and look in a different window. Confirm their suspicions. Yeah. Now when I look in a different window, I understand why you see those little gray men behind your sofa. Now when I look from another window, I understand where you're coming from. I don't understand you, but does that make sense? I'm very careful on my words, Tony,
Yeah.
right? It's like, I don't understand you, but I understand where you're coming from. It's very subtle. I understand where you're coming from.
I think too that basically the bottom line is just really the respect, holding people in a place of respect.
Hmm.
Tying in with what Tom was saying earlier about, don't, when people come in, they expect, especially when you're talking about discovery call, people are like, all right, you're gonna try to sell me something. And
Mhm.
coming in with that immediate, either, oh, whatever, what are you selling, I'm buying, or I just want to have a conversation. I don't want to try something. And so that defense coming up and really just allowing people to be where they are and respecting that. And so many people have in a sales situation, they expect for you to think you're right and you're going to try to prove your point to them. And if we could just let go of being right and explore the situation with them, then I think that just builds such a respect and rapport that then they're the people who, even if they do never decide to, agree with what you're doing, no, thank you very much, I'm happy at the hospital, I feel much safer there. But if they know anybody who is like, man, I'm just really afraid to go to the hospital, I wish I had another alternative, they might go, well, not for me, but I had this conversation with this woman, and they would trust you to refer to you even when they don't agree with you.
Yeah. Tom gave you a 2 thumbs up on that one. Let go of being right. Let go of you being the right person.
Yeah,
Maybe
I found that attachment to right and wrong. If you can let go of the attachment to right and wrong, it gets so many things out of the way. if you're not attached to right and wrong. For me, it helps so much in every aspect of life.
It leads to happy marriages.
It's your right versus that's right.
Mm.
Whenever you're in a discussion with your significant other and they say the words, yeah, honey, you're right. What that means is I'm done talking about it, now let's go to something else. But when they say, yeah, that's right, that means that you have explained it in a way that they understand. You've explained their position to them. And I mean, that's how we did it in law enforcement. That's how Chris Voss, the
Mhm.
FBI hostage negotiation, would do it. He'd be talking to terrorists and explaining their worldview. And that when the terrorist finally said, that's right, that meant that they had made progress. So seek that's right, not your right. And it makes a world of difference.
It reminds me also on a principle of Aikido, because your opponent in and then you for opportunity to insert some other view that is possible for the other person to hear you. That
Ananda, your sound is coming in and out from me. I bet it is for everybody else.
oh, okay, I don't know what is
You're
wrong,
back now.
but-
You're back now. So something is
Okay, I was just talking about the principle in Aikido arts, where your opponent, you're not opponent.
yeah.
And in that process of your conversation, you go along because then you're hearing the other person. You go into their space. And maybe in certain moment, you are able to insert this little thing that the opponent can hear you, because you want that they hear you, not just oppose you.
Take some time to walk down the path with them a ways. Yeah.
Oh,
Because
wait.
that's for us, because you always think that we are right.
Yeah.
Can the-
Richard, what'd you say?
Can the skeptic speak?
Well, yes, you can, but I want to rewind one notch to what Tony mentioned. He mentioned Chris Voss. If you ever want to geek out on something, check out Chris Voss. It's Chris with a C, the FBI negotiator. Don't go down that rabbit hole for too long, but watch one or two of his videos on hostage negotiation. It's worth your time. It's worth your time. Richard, my skeptic
Well,
friend,
okay.
who I commiserate with your skepticism. I understand your skepticism.
Oh, geez.
And I'm an ally of your skepticism. I appreciate your skepticism.
And I'd wish you just shut your mic off and sit down. Taken from a broad 1,000-mile over the earth situation in the Western world, we've kind of created a situation with all this hyper kindness that we often don't debate difficult situations. I mean, what everybody's talking today is talking about technique, which I agree with 100%. And after having built trust and having empathized and having done all this, if you have to, how do you take the next step to talk about difficult situations? Now, there are numerous books on how to have difficult conversations. And I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but there isn't any point from a societal standpoint for everybody to agree with everything and confirm everybody's suspicions and create a happy-go-lucky world if we never have the final discussion of, I don't see it the way you see it. And here's.
All right. So you're telling me when Martin Luther pinned all of those questions on the door of the church, that wasn't like the end of it?
Well, hell no, it wasn't the end of it. No, he was
Yeah.
he was hiding the rest of his life. I just saw
Yeah.
Salman Rushdie interviewed last night. Oh my God, he just got stabbed 17 times. I
Hmm.
mean, Bill, how much? Okay, I'm trying to take the 1,000-mile viewpoint here, not a sales call. You're doing a sales call. You want to be as kind, gentle, and as agreeable as you possibly
I
can.
want to be a better human.
Yeah. But to be a better human, sometimes you have to talk about stuff, actually get to the thing you don't agree with. And building all that trust and rapport is the way to get there.
Hmm.
But the purpose of building all that rapport is so in the end, you can calmly say, now let's talk about this thing. I mean, you like Chris Voss, and I've got to look him up. That sounds great. I like Robin Dreeke, who's another FBI, CIA, whatever, who negotiates with terrorists.
Hmm.
His thing is building trust.
Hmm.
And he does it the same way you're all. This simple act of giving someone a pen across your desk starts to build trust. Give them something, give anything, just give them something, for example.
Or
But
get them
eventually,
or get them to do something they can actually do.
yeah.
Right. Chet used to train us because this is way before Zoom. We were doing phone calls. I would when I got on the phone with a business owner, I says, "You got a piece of paper and pencil handy? I'm gonna tell you some stuff that's important, and you're gonna want to write it down."
Mm-hmm. So I'm not, I don't know what I'm saying. I guess I'm getting all societal and philosophical and big picture here. There are a lot of issues we have to discuss, and we can't just all confirm each other's suspicions till the sun comes up and down. At some point, I don't like confirming someone's suspicion if it's a crazy suspicion. I like confirming them as a person, respecting them as a person,
Wow.
and understanding how they got there and saying so. Look, Robin Dreeke does the same thing. He interviews terrorists and bombers and people who want to blow up things. He doesn't agree. He doesn't take that last step of, oh, your suspicion is valid. He doesn't take that final step. He's like, I get how you got there. If I was in your shoes, I would get there too. Now, now that we
Right.
trust each other.
And probably the key, Richard, here is in this process, confirming suspicions is not the same as agreeing with their suspicions or amplifying their suspicions or
Correct.
something like
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Right. It's you've got to walk down the path long enough with them, like you say, to build the trust to where you can be a Peter Falk and go, just one more
Yeah,
thing.
that last little bit.
Just one more thing. Right. But the earth is definitely flat.
Still flat. It's still flat.
It's still flat. I'm sorry. You all are delusional. It's there's a gentleman I'm in his group currently, right? He's a genius when it comes to marketing and all things stuff. And this guy's taking companies into the billions. And I watch what he posts on social media, and it's because I know what he's doing because he does that. He the other day he didn't say it, but he said something just basically like that. Says the earth is flat, prove me wrong. That's not what he said, but he might as well have said that. Does that make sense? What do you think happened when he posted that? Do you think people ignored it?
No, they were all over it. I'm sure they were doing
Oh,
everything, pulling out
They're
every stop
posted
they could.
links.
Oh my gosh, a week later, right? I mean, it's still going. It's still going. So it's just like, okay. Um, never what is the Bill Clinton's phrase? Never let a good what is it? Oh,
Never pass up a good crisis.
yeah,
Something like
that's
that.
is
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
was that Bill Clinton,
yeah.
right? That
It was
never
Bill Clinton. I think he got it from Dick Morris.
Yeah, from Dick. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's just like, okay, here it is. So in your life and in your business, when things kind of go sideways, use it. Don't sit there and wallow in it. Use it when things are tanking, when things are moving sideways, when you think the world is falling apart. That is the best time to run at it. It's kind of counterintuitive. Sometimes I'll talk to somebody that's a budding entrepreneur, and they says, "Oh, I got to get my desk organized first. Oh, I got to get my credit score up. Oh, I got to pay off some debt first." Or I hear any number of things, right? The opposite is true. it's just totally opposite. In 12 minutes, I'm going to be on a Zoom call with the CEO of a $300 million company. Both his parents were immigrants. He grew up in Boston, in a 500 square foot apartment facing a brick wall. He's 28 years old now. One of his places where he lives is in Miami. It's a $34,000 a month rent. It's a 4,000 square foot penthouse apartment overlooking the coast. That's one of his places that he flies between in his own private jet. What's the difference? Right? He ran at it. He didn't run away from it. He did very poorly in school, didn't make it through school, did the typical stuff on the streets when he was a teenager that he probably shouldn't have been doing, messed it up over and over again. He's 28 years old. What's your excuse? I'll help you guys out. Good conversation today. Help you out. Give you some ideas. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Donald, would you mind just repeating what he did? Because you blanked out at the most important section. So when I was, what did this guy do? What did he do?
He ran at it rather than running away from it. He
ran at it. Okay, thank you.
He ran at it, and you know,
yeah, thanks.
It's all the stuff it's the same stuff that we come up in front of sometimes, and we think, oh, I need to step back. Oh, I need to get my credit score figured out. Oh, I need to pay off my debt, or oh, I need a better car, or oh my gosh, I don't have the right training, or I don't have all the information. When that was all true for him, he ran at it.
I'm surprised. I honestly would have expected him to find more reasons and more things he had to do before he could run at it. I'm surprised he did, though.
Right. Yeah, he ran at it. And it'll be an interesting conversation. You know, but it's pay attention. You know, like when you see people that have broken through, you're going to find surprising answers. You're going to find some surprising answers. It's not what you think it is. It's all of this stuff. Okay, my friends, good stuff.